welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt. With me today, relationship life coach Cindie Chavez. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Jackie's off this week. She's not going to be joining us this week, but she'll be back next week. And in the meantime, Cindie dreamed up a really cool show for us today. And it's on a topic, Cindie, I have to admit, I knew nothing about when you mentioned it to me. You said human design. I said, there's a design to this? No, that's not what I actually said. What I said was, I've never heard of that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about it. What's this all about?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know, like you said, I dreamed up this idea. I literally did. Like, I think I woke up one morning and had this idea. And I know I've talked about this before on the podcast as well as with clients, is that sometimes I'll give my brain something to work on when I go to sleep. And then I wake up with, an idea or an answer. And when I learned that our brains work just as hard or maybe harder when we're sleeping than when we're awake, that was a real shock to me at the time. Because, I always had this idea that we go to sleep and we might dream, but that, our brain's kind of like offline, like we're resting, but it's really not. Like, there's a lot of brain activity while we're sleeping. As a matter of fact, when I had my accident in Dallas, when I fell,
right,
I cracked my phone screen.
Oh no.
And it was cracked. It flew out of my hand and it was cracked in several places. And I knew I had a screen protector, but I thought my screen protector was like one of those very thin films that just protects it from scratches. Mm-hmm. So I thought my phone screen was cracked and that the film was like just the thing that was holding it together. I wasn't really worried about it. Well, my husband wakes up one morning, like just a few days ago, and I knew he was sleeping. And then all of a sudden, because I was awake, all of a sudden he says to me, "Could I borrow your phone, or could I have your phone?" And I thought he was like talking in his sleep. Like 1 second he was asleep, and the next second he was saying, "Could I have your phone?" And, I was like looking at my phone at the time, and I said, okay. And I handed him my phone, and I look at him, and he pops the case off my phone, and he rips the screen protector off, and my screen is perfect. And it was one of those heavy glass screen protectors, and it was what was broken.
Right.
He said, and I looked at him, and I was like, oh my gosh. And he said, "I just dreamed this."
I love it.
Dreamed that it was my screen protector that was cracked. And so, it always amazes me that our brain is like, it's working on something, right? So I had this idea, and I reached out to you, and I said, hey, Walt, I have this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been studying human design, this system that I'm going to talk about, for, I guess, since 2014.
Ooh, so, okay, for a while.
Yeah. Now, I have to admit, when I first found out about it, and we'll get into this in a little bit, but when I found out my type and the things that I immediately found out about me, I said, oh, no way. And I sort of put it away. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why when we get to that part. But I kept feeling nudged to pick it up and look at it again. Take another look. So I did. And I decided, well, this is just going to be an experiment. Like, I'm going to look at it like an experiment. Like, I often look at things like a game, right? I was like, this is just an experiment. I'm just going to try it out. And if it doesn't fit, I'll just let it go. But it fits so well that I just kept studying. And then I started using it with my clients. And I'm seeing some really awesome things happen. And, my clients often hire me because they want to consciously create things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I realized that it's fitting really well with that idea.
Okay.
And so I thought, so what I asked you if I could do was to talk about human design and also read your chart for you on the air. And you were like, I said, we can read it. But we can have a call and read this first, and then we can talk about it. You go, no. Let's just do it on the air. I was like, okay. But it's going to
Which was an interesting kind of reaction for me, to be perfectly honest, because you asked as preparation for doing this, you asked what my birth date and birth time was, and I wasn't 100% sure, but I knew that my sister would have that information, and she had actually worked up a whole astrological chart on me years ago, so that's what I ended up sending to you. Now, that experience was one of many that I'd had where what was written up, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where my sister got it. She probably got it off of some psychic who was doing astrology readings or things like that. I'm not 100% sure. But what my experience had been with so many of these was that the report that came out just didn't feel like it would match very, very often. And that the one that I sent to you was like that, because I mean they go through and they label for each of the different houses and all. I don't even understand all this stuff, but for all this stuff they had, well, this means this and this means this, and some of the things they meant were like way off compared to who I am. So I said, yeah, okay, fine, have fun, So in the back of my mind I said, well, what could possibly go wrong here? I mean, I kind of like threw the thing out the window before. If I don't like it here, I'll just throw it out the window again.
Exactly. And that's what I always think too, is like, if this doesn't feel like it's you, then it's not information that's going to help you, right? So
exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly.
The other thing, though, that I will bring up, and we'll talk about it probably more later, is the idea of conditioning. And that is that we are conditioned to think certain things, by our parents, our teachers, our friends, our society at large, mostly society, right? We have all these ideas. And sometimes we have thoughts about ourselves that may or may not be correct, but because we've been conditioned to think a certain way, that feels right. And I'll talk about that actually when I talk about my own chart a little bit. But I want to start with just saying human design is a system that's an amalgamation of 4 systems of astrology, of the Chinese Yi Jing, or you sometimes hear it pronounced I Ching, because that's how it looks like it's written. I believe the correct pronunciation, if we care, is Yi Jing. So I try to say it right. The Hindu chakra system, the Hindu chakra system has 7 chakras. This system is a little bit evolved from that. It has 9 what we call centers, but they are in line with the Hindu chakras, and then the Jewish Kabbalah. So it's like an amalgamation of these 4 systems. And yes, we do use your birthday and your birthplace and your birth time to determine your personal chart. So this system came about in about the most woo-woo way anything could ever come about.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Who thinks to put 4 different systems together like this? This is like, okay, this is different.
So there was a man, and his name was, at birth, I believe it was Robert Allen Krakowitz or something like that, but he changed his name. And I don't know if he changed his name before or after this experience, but my understanding was that he was on a sort of meditative retreat on the island of Ibiza, and he got this whole download of information, which is like a lot of information. His name was changed to Ra Uru Hu. And this was like in the 80s. So, it's a very new system in the span of time. And then when you look at these ancient systems like the Kabbalah and like astrology and the I Ching, these are like ancient things. The Hindu chakras have been around forever. And then this system's brand new. And I know that for some people, we talk about Abraham Hicks, right? Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, and how you and I have had this discussion before. Like for some people, the fact that that information is channeled, it makes it more relevant. And for other people, it makes it like less relevant. They're not sure of it because of that. And where I stand on that is that I don't really care. The information needs to be able to stand on its own. And the information is it either works or it doesn't. It's either valid or it's not. And so I kind of look at it that way. So, but I really love this explanation. I'm not sure how I found out about human design. And what I'm uncertain about is that I found Richard Rudd and his Gene Keys teaching, which the Gene Keys book is phenomenal. And I might have learned about human design through that, or else it was the other way around. I'm not sure anymore, because Richard Rudd was one of the first, or the first person, I believe, that was licensed to teach human design in the UK.
Wow.
And he taught it for a decade, and out of his teaching experience with it, his system of gene keys was another like evolution. And so he has a wonderful explanation for this, this idea of this wisdom teaching just sort of coming whole and complete out of nowhere, like all of a sudden, right? Because as far as I know, a lot of people that buy into, I'm going to use that term, I'm one of them, but is interested in astrology or the chakras or whatever, there's never any, well, where did this come from? Because it's been around for so long and it's sort of proven itself, right? And we just kind of accept it as it is. But with this system, it's like, well, where did this come from? Some guy just channeled this on the island of Ibiza, in 1987 or whatever. But I had a sort of miracle happen getting ready for this call. So I remember in the years that I've been studying Richard Rudd's material, which is since 2014 as well, I heard him say a word one time, and a one sentence to describe that word that sort of talked about how these teachings come into being. I couldn't remember the word. I didn't write it down.
Oh.
I have read thousands of pages of his teachings, essays, books, and listened to hours and hours of audio and video over the last, however many years. And I was like, I only heard him say this word once.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I really want to talk about this. How am I going to find this? So I woke up about 3 days ago and I said, I need to find this word, and it's not an English word, and I don't even know what to Google for the word to come up. But I really want to talk about this. And I told my husband, I said, okay, this is my goal for the day. I will find this word. The second thought in my mind was that, and it might take you all day. I didn't even know where to start. So I came into my computer and I Googled a few things, but nothing was bringing up anything. So I took a break. Now, I'd only been at it for like 2 minutes, right? So I took a break after 2 minutes, and I Googled Richard Rudd's name, and YouTube brought up a video that he was doing because they're having this big human design conference in September, I believe in Colorado. It might have already happened. And it was another of my favorite teachers, Karen Curry Parker, interviewing Richard Rudd. And it was a little short video. It was about 14 minutes. So I thought, in my scope, in my intention that I already made, that I will find this word today, it was still only like 9:30 in the morning. And I thought, well, it's 14 minutes. I'm going to watch this first, and then I'll get serious about it.
I love it.
5 minutes into the interview, she asked him a question about human design and how it came about. And he says, the Tibetans have this wonderful word. And I'm still like, oh my God. So the word was Tama. And the way he described it was that the Tibetans have this wonderful word, and the word is called Tama. And Tama, through their understanding, refers to a wisdom transmission that is sort of dropped like a bomb into the time-space continuum all at once. And from there, and this was relating to a Buddhist, the second Buddha, Padmasambhava, I believe is how you pronounce it. His teachings, that they just came this way. And then his disciples would begin teaching them and learning them and allow them to like flower and open up and evolve into whatever they would evolve into, which is what's happening with human design. And so it was so exciting to like be preparing for this and have that happen. It felt like a miracle, right? Like I made an intention. I got really clear on it.
Yeah.
And the thing just came to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It just came to me. So that is part of.
In fact, by the way, it just dropped in.
Dropped in like a bomb, right? It's like dropped in like everything I wanted. And the funny thing was, is I'd only heard him talk for like one sentence on it before, and this time he talked for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I got more.
Oh, nice.
Right? So,
yeah.
So it was excellent. Okay, so we use your birth date, birthplace, birth time, and we come up with a chart. And like an astrology chart, there is so much information in this chart that I couldn't cover it in an hour if I wanted to. I couldn't cover it in, I mean, I don't know the amount of time. It takes forever, right? It takes a lifetime, like with astrology, to actually walk through the things and try them on and see how they fit and live with them. But I want to give the very basic things. So in astrology, the basic thing would be like, well, I'm a Taurus sun and a Virgo rising. That's pretty basic, right? You can do a lot with that. So I'm going to start with the types.
Okay.
There are only 4 types. So
well, that makes it easy.
4 types. So 1% of the population are the type called the reflector. And when you look at the chart and you see these 9 centers in what's called the body graph, all of their centers are what we say open. So they don't have any defined centers. And so 1%, and that's not very many. I only know one. I only know one person that's a reflector. 9% of the population are the type that is referred to as manifestors. And manifestors, you know, they are the type that has success when they initiate something. And I think that this is part of the reason why this is such an important conversation for people that are learning and practicing the law of attraction. Because we're always talking about manifestation.
Right.
And we're also encouraged by all of society to initiate things. Just go do it. And yet there's only 9% of the population that can really do that and have success with it.
Yeah.
So 20% of the population are projectors. That's me. And each type has what's known as a strategy. And we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to tell you what mine is right now. My strategy is to wait for an invitation. This is why I said, I'm not doing this. Are you kidding me? Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own business. I can't wait to be invited. But I started putting this into practice as an experiment right a few months before you invited me to be your co-host.
Oh my.
And I think I told you at the time, I didn't relate it to human design, but I said, oh my gosh, I made the intention that I wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah.
But I did not want to figure out how to set it all up. I just wanted to do a podcast.
Right.
And a week later, you emailed me out of the blue. I did not know you. And you said, hey, I'm interested in talking to you about being a co-host on this podcast, on my podcast. And I was like, what? Oh my God. So 20% of us are projectors. And then 70% of the population are generators. Now, projectors like me, we were not made to work because we don't produce energy. But generators produce energy. You know, we talk about the Energizer Bunny. That's kind of like generators. They produce energy and they are made to work and they're good at working and they're the ones running the world. Generators run the world. So out of half of the generators, they actually are a hybrid. Half the generators are a hybrid of a manifestor and a generator, and they're called manifesting generators. And Walt, that's you.
Oh, that's me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to talk about for a minute the strategies for each type.
Okay.
The reflectors can do anything they want. They can do anything they want, but their strategy is that they need to wait a complete lunation cycle before they make a decision. Now, we're not talking about decisions like, you know, should I have pizza or Chinese food tonight? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the big decisions we make in life, right? The big things. Do I move here? Do I take this job? Do I marry this person? You know, big things, bigger things. Should I write this book? Maybe that's big enough. But, you know, should I be on this podcast? Do I want to have a podcast? You know, things that are going to impact our life for more than just the next hour. You know, like what should I eat or what shirt should I wear today? Those things, reflectors are supposed to wait a lunation cycle, and that will give them more surprises and less disappointment.
Interesting.
Now, manifestors, their strategy, they can initiate. They can just get an idea in their head and go do it. Their strategy, though, so that they will have more peace and less anger, is to inform people, to let other people know what they're doing. Because sometimes they get an idea and they have so much energy to just get that thing done that they just don't tell anybody what they're doing. They just go for it. And then that can cause problems. Because in the human design system, it's recognized that we're all part of the human system, and we're all made to work together. These types are meant to all be part of a machine that works like clockwork, right? And so we want to keep other people informed if we're a manifester. Now, projectors, yeah, our strategy is wait for the invitation. And I wasn't real keen on doing that at first, but I've recognized now that the invitations do come. And when they do, it's always, better to have been waiting than to be pushing and trying to make things happen. The other thing with projectors is that we are the guides for the world. And so we often have wisdom or advice or, things that we could see that would be useful. And when someone asks us for that, that's our invitation, then it's usually received really well. But if we try to offer it when the person has not asked for it, usually they don't hear it at all. And then we can feel rejected and hurt, like, gosh, I had the best advice and they wouldn't even hear it. Well, that's because I didn't wait for the invitation. That's where I didn't wait for that green light to go ahead and give the advice. And
I got to ask you something about this, because the word projector is an interesting choice of a label for what you're describing.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't have normally thought of that as being projecting.
It's because our aura projects out and touches other people. And I wanted, yeah. And so there's actually something really interesting that you mentioned that I made a note about to not forget to talk about, because I mentioned Karen Curry Parker earlier. She's a phenomenal human design teacher, and her own system that she's evolved includes different languaging. And in her languaging, projectors are called orchestrators.
I like that. Yeah, sure.
Right? Yeah, and you're gonna like. I'll get to that in a second, but you're gonna like the names that she came up with. She has a very positive and affirming bent on everything in the human design system, and I really like it a lot. Okay, so generators, which you are a generator. You're a manifesting generator, but that's still a generator. And generators' strategy is to respond. And it's many times, to wait to respond. So an example that I actually heard Karen Curry Parker give one time is someone's at their desk and they're at work and they think, oh, I need a vacation. So they book a vacation right then and there. That's not waiting to respond, because the response needs to be to something external.
Oh.
So they've not waited to respond. But when they go to the doctor and the doctor says, look, you're really under a lot of stress, you could use a vacation. And then driving home, they see a billboard that's advertising, this vacation condo. And then they get to their home and there's a postcard from a friend that lives at the beach that says, I wish you'd come see me. Those are external things. And then they could respond to that. And so often the things that a generator is thinking about will show up externally. And that's the key, is to wait to respond to it when it's external. The cool thing is that generators can look for things to respond to. Just find the thing to respond to. And so that's often really cool. Now, what that will do for a generator is that will give them more satisfaction and less frustration. But here's the thing I've recognized with my generator clients, and because generators are 70% of us, I have more generator clients than any other type. And one of the things that I read that actually it was sort of like we just recognized it because it kept happening. And then I started studying more and seeing, okay, this is a thing. And that is that frustration is part of the creation process for a generator. So one of the things that some of my clients have recognized is that at that moment that they finally hit like peak frustration over something, like, oh my gosh, I just can't, this has to shift. And then they kind of go through that giving up, like, okay, whatever, like, and then boom, it happens. And in a really big way. When you start recognizing that pattern, here's the cool part. Then when you get frustrated, it's not so bad because you recognize that, oh, that thing is almost here.
I see. Okay.
So it's almost a sign that the thing is on its way, which is much better, right, than having that idea that I'm feeling frustrated, so this thing's never going to happen. That's not true. It's just part of the learning curve, and it's part of the process. So what happens when you realize that as a generator is that it's not that you'll never get frustrated again, but you see frustration a little differently. And of course, it lasts for a much shorter period of time because you're willing to allow, right? And we talk about that a lot with law of attraction, is allowing. Okay, so the manifesting generators, which is half the generators, you also, Walt, because you're a manifesting generator. So in this system, you also would need to wait to respond. But because you also have that manifestor energy, you would also need to inform before you took action. Because you've got both of those things going on. But you also have sort of like the best of both worlds, because you've got both of those types like blended together in a hybrid. So I want to tell you, this is the first thing I noticed about your chart, and I was just cracking up laughing. I'm going to tell you Karen Curry Parker's names for the types.
Okay.
The generators, she calls alchemists. And the manifesting generators, which is you, she calls time benders. I love so much because, time travel is my thing. I was like, oh, I want to be that. Okay. The projectors.
Here I am with a galaxy behind me as my back screen.
Right? So projectors are orchestrators. Manifestors are initiators because they are the ones that can initiate things. And the reflectors are calibrators, because reflectors, with all their open centers, they really do reflect what's happening in their community. So I'm going to talk about the centers. We said that they sort of parallel with the chakra system. So we'll talk about the centers and what they are. We have the head center, that's the thoughts, and the ajna, which is it would be the third eye kind of center, is the next one. Then the throat, which has to do with communication, of course. The next one is the G center, not the solar plexus, but the G center, or the identity center. Some people say that G is for God center. And that has a lot to do, that's a center that has a lot to do with who we are. Then there's the heart center, the spleen, the sacral, the solar plexus, and the root. And they all have different functions, and some of them are motors. And so the motors are where we start creating energy. And it's I believe it's when the motor is attached to the throat, there's energy. So the most powerful motor in this system is the sacral. And that is actually one of the authorities, which means how you make a decision for you. You have sacral authority. And this is the most fascinating thing to me, anyway, to talk about this sacral. I do not have sacral. My sacral is open. And your sacral is defined and connected to your throat. And that's what gives you your type. And so when you have sacral authority, they call these sacral sounds. So you talk about like making decisions, and none of us should be making decisions from our head. And most of us make all of our decisions from our head, right? So like my decision-making authority is emotional. And what that means is that I actually need to kind of ride the wave of an emotion about something, or else this is what happens. An opportunity comes, it seems great because I'm in a really happy mood right now, and I just heard about this and I go, yeah, that would be great. Okay, let's do it. And then the next morning I wake up and I go, oh, why did I say yes? So what I have to do is I have to wait for, I like to tell people, let me sleep on that. I've probably said this to you before, right? Like, let me get back to you about that. Because it might seem really great and exciting, and then I might go through a time I think, oh no, I don't think I want to do that at all. Okay, I need to wait till all that emotional wave is past, and then I have a neutral feeling in my body, and I can look at it clearly and say, yeah, no, I do want to do that. Yeah, let's do that. And I make that decision. You, on the other hand, have this sacral thing that's so awesome. Here's what it is. There are something called sacral sounds. And the sounds are uh-huh and uh-uh.
Okay.
And here's what I think is funny. Like, I don't remember this for me as a child, probably because I don't have a defined sacral. So I wouldn't have said uh-huh or uh-uh. But I remember my siblings being like scolded for doing that. Like a yes or no question, right? Do you want this? Uh-uh. Don't tell me uh-uh. You say yes or no, right? But those are the sacral sounds. And it's said that those sounds actually rev up the sacral motor. So if you haven't been using those sounds for a long time, you can start experimenting with using them. They will get that motor running, so to speak, and you'll get more used to letting it decide. And if you think of where, you know, right sort of around your navel, like in your gut area, when someone says, would you like this? Uh-uh. How about this? Uh-huh. Like, and you can start to feel it. And it's really interesting with a generator that, you know, that type, a generator or a manifesting generator, they have a real keen sense of place, like whether they're in the right place. And I think I made this comment when I told the story in the podcast about when we went to Dallas, that when we checked into the hotel, we actually had a problem with the first hotel and we had to find a different one. And we walked into the second one. We both like felt like we breathed a sigh of relief, but I was just picking up on my husband, who is a generator, of his knowledge of right place, right time. Like he knew this is the right place. Okay, now we're in the right place. And it was just like something clicks. So you may or may not say, yeah, I have that happen with me. It might happen with you, where you feel like you're in the right place and something clicks.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
It's true. I get that. That does happen.
So in the chart with the centers, there are 4 motors, and the sacral motor is the only sustainable power source in the chart. And you have that. And you not only have that, I don't want to get too deep about gates and channels and all this other stuff, because it's a lot, but you have like not just 4 channels activated in that sacral, but you have or 4 gates, but you have 4 complete channels, which many of us don't have any completed channels. Someone else completes that channel. So in other words, if there are 2 centers and they're connected by a channel, sometimes you'll have half of it and the other person has the other half. And that's why when we get together with other people, there's energy happening. We're completing these channels that are connected to different things. I think it's pretty awesome. But I was going to say that when I first saw your chart and I saw time bender, because one of the things about a manifesting generator is that you probably do things a lot faster than other people. And you probably are really good at figuring out shortcuts. And most likely you're very good at multitasking. Now, the downside of that is that sometimes you might skip an important step and then have to go back and redo it. But you're really good at that. And when I saw your chart, I had this memory of like when we were first working together and you had this idea, because we kept hearing all these stories, people.
Oh,
LOA
I know what you go. Yes.
And you send me this email and you're like, I have this great idea. This is what we should do. We should make a book. And we'll get all these different people that listen to the show and that are coaches and people we know to write stories about their big law of attraction victories. And we'll put it all together. And, you know, and it was all like amazing and such a great idea. And then I was like, you sent me the dates and it was like, you were going to do all of this in like such a short period of time. But I think I literally wrote back and said, that's not going to happen. Like
you did.
And you were like, oh, yes, it can. And I was like, you know what? You're so confident about this. Okay, let's just go for it. And you did it. Like
I did.
And the thing was, is I had the year before written a collaborative book, and the people that put it together have done many, many bestsellers. They were not newbies to this at all. And it like took us a prescribed amount of time that was much, much longer than what you were planning. So I thought I was like, oh no, this would be impossible. And you're like, no, it's not. I thought, well, okay. So when I saw Time Bender and like that you can do things much faster than other people, I cracked up. I was like, I think we got something here. I think
that is funny. Oh my goodness.
The other thing is that Um, Manifesting generators have an internal creative flow that's nonverbal. So you have got this creative flow going on in your head, in yourself, that's internal about things that you want to create, things that you're going to do, ways you want to work things out. And it's nonverbal. So, and you work so fast, like things flow with you so fast that if someone like stops you to say, hey, what's going on? Or, you know, do you need my help with something? That verbalization and having to answer verbally may completely take you out of the creative flow. And you may feel like someone's slowing you down, getting in your way, like interrupting you, like you just, and of course, their intention is completely loving and kind and good. It doesn't matter, but it's like for you, it's like, oh, I can't deal with this right now. Like I've got this flow going.
I am so far very impressed with this human design thing, because everything you're saying is spot on about me. Every single thing so far. I have not had that with most of these systems. So this is cool.
So yeah. So here's the thing though, is like you are not here to initiate things out of your head because of that need to respond to it showing up externally, right? And so sometimes, you know, sometimes that is hard because you want to just jump right in and do it. And it doesn't mean that you won't ever get things done if you do that. But when we learn how to use the strategy to our advantage and wait to respond to the external, we start realizing how easy it is and how much we are designed for things to flow to us. And I think that is a very law of attraction kind of concept, that we're designed to allow things to flow to us and to just show up. But so many times we're busy like pushing and trying to make it happen, right? And that is just resistance in another form when we're pushing and trying to make it happen.
Sure is.
You've got like so much going on here that's really awesome, because you're here to build and to work and to become you. Like that, it's all about becoming who you are. I was talking to somebody today and realized that it was a client who said something about doing something, and it hit me that one of my, well, I think it was when I was in coaching school, one of the things I learned right off the bat, which was one of our little, you know, keynotes, was that the idea of doing is work and being is effortless. And so many times we are doing to get something, right? Like I work to get a paycheck.
Right.
People will come to me with desires that they have, that they want me to support them in creating, and they'll say, what do I need to do? Because they want to do X to get Y. And I always bring them back to being is effortless. So when we can be, then we can just allow. Is it doing to get, or is it just being the person that has that thing so that we can allow it to come to us? Like finding that word I was looking for was such a great example of that, because I was intent on doing it. I made the strong declaration that I would find this word today. And I was willing to spend the day looking for it. But I was also just open, like that willingness was from an openness that said, oh, I'm going to find it. I'm going to. And then it just showed up like faster than I could have ever believed. And I've been having that experience more and more and more as I follow my design. As I learn more about my chart and do the test with it, right? Like it's either me or it's not me. But, you know, I was conditioned from a very young age to work hard, to get it done, to initiate things, and none of those are part of my chart. Like what they say about a generator is that when you wake up in the morning, providing you have slept well that you eat well. We have to take the foundations of good health into consideration, but that if all those things are going well for you and you're healthy, when you wake up, you have like 100% energy. You're like a car with a full tank of gas. And that energy, once you get rolling and you're using your design, that engine, that motor, it just keeps going and it keeps you going. A projector, on the other hand, when we wake up after a good night's sleep, which I don't always get, and eating good and taking care of ourselves, we have like a third of a tank of gas and it doesn't really get refilled.
Really?
So we have bigger requirements for downtime and for rest.
Interesting.
Yeah. And when I found that out, I realized one of the things I found out when I found that out was that in a younger projector's or orchestrator's life, we're often just making up for that lack of energy with adrenaline. And so we don't really notice it because we're drinking coffee or we got the adrenaline going and we're doing all these things to keep ourselves going because society and everyone is telling us to hustle, like go. And then when we get to a certain age, our adrenals like say, I can't do this anymore. And when I read all of that, when I found all of that out, then I realized, oh my gosh, some of this, it hasn't been that I'm the Energizer Bunny. It's that I've been conditioned to push myself as hard as I can so that I can keep up with all the generators. And then I just burned my adrenals out.
Yeah.
And now that I am learning for the past, especially the past couple of years, I've really been into this experiment. Now that I'm learning that if I will just take care of myself and be who I am and wait for the invitations, then I don't have to push. So
let me ask you something before you go further here, because like I said a moment ago, what you were describing about me, point after point after point, was really pretty accurate. I'm wondering, did you have the same experience for yourself when you read what your own chart was saying, when it was saying things that you're a projector, that you need to take a step back, all the stuff that you're saying to me now? Did that resonate? Did that actually make sense to you?
Well, I resisted it at first because I thought, well, there's no way I can just lay back and wait for it to come to me. No, that's not going to happen. I got to hustle. So I resisted it at first, but something which I call my wiser self kept nudging me to look again, again. And when I started really looking again, oh yeah, it resonated. Like
it did.
Like I was looking at our charts, and you have the heart center on your chart is open, and the heart center on my chart is also open. And one of the kind of challenges with that heart center open, so it'd be like the downside of the heart center, is feeling like you have something to prove. And I kind of resisted that in the split second I heard it, right? Why? Because I immediately was like, I don't have anything to prove. But then I looked back at especially my younger life. I literally would leave like a notebook of my to-do list, like out in the desk, or on the counter where someone could see it. Why? Because look how hard I work. Like I was trying to prove. And I realize now what's really funny is that, I was trying to prove I could keep up with the generators because I really was struggling to do it. But I was constantly trying to convince myself that I can do this. And
that's what I was thinking when you said that you left the notebooks out and so forth. I said to myself, well, was she leaving them out for herself or for everybody else? Because I got the sense you were leaving it out for you.
Yeah, I was. It was like, because I was trying to prove something to myself. And so, yes, I would have to say that everything in my chart, and I was looking around because I had my chart out in front of me and now I don't. And I don't, automatically just know it so well. But the things in my chart, like what's really interesting is that I have an activated throat center. And I also, in my astrology chart, Mercury, who is the god of communication, is my chart ruler. It's like very obvious that I came here to communicate something. like I have something to say. And then the centers that deal with wisdom are there. And I don't always think I'm the wisest person, but sometimes I shock myself and, say something wise, right? And
Well, speaking on behalf of the podcast and the listeners, I would say you're very wise. You have a lot of very interesting things to say, and we get emails about it. So you can rest assured you really do have a lot to say that's worth hearing.
So some of it, is that I've made the intention that I want to be a vessel. I want to be it's so funny when I say this word. I told somebody today, this isn't my language usually, and it's been coming up to me for over 2 weeks, just very, very strong. You are a clear channel. And I'm like, but I don't feel like I channel, in the sense that people say they are a channel. But I often find myself saying something to a client or someone I'm working with that was like, oh, it's like, so I think the intention has been there ever since, I was conscious of helping other people pretty much my whole life. But I think it's because of my design, right? It's not like I decided. It's just that eventually you do line up with who you really are, right?
Regardless of what we might try to do to avoid it. But yeah.
Regardless, right. So I think that, with you have really strong motor in your chart and really strong, like 4 complete channels, 3 of them, I think, to your throat. That sacral motor is really strong. So for you, using like practicing with the and even if it's just like on your own, like if here's an interesting thing I had to kind of change my mind about, and that is that coaching people, I'm often asking open-ended questions, because open-ended questions get that right side of the brain moving. Right? That's where the imagination, the possibility is. And so usually I'm asking open-ended questions, but for generators, which is most of my clients, generators respond really well and get a big knowledge of themselves when they're asked a yes or no question.
Okay.
And so sometimes you can actually just have someone ask you yes or no questions, and you just do the and or and you'll start to feel it, and you'll start to know. Like we talk about a full body yes, right? Like when something, I use this example when my kids were little, like they were 6 and 8. We took them on a beach vacation, but we were close to Orlando, but we were at a beach, and they didn't know we were taking them to Disney World. So like the 3rd day in, we said, guys, get up and get ready. And it was early, and they were like, what are we doing? And we were saying, look, and we showed them the tickets to Disney World. These 2 guys had a full body yes.
I'm sure.
They were jumping and running around. Yes, right. So that full body yes, we get to know that in the sacral. As a generator, you can know that in your sacral center and know very clearly if something is a yes or a no for you.
Very interesting.
By using those sounds. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Like I said, it's one of the things I've been doing when my clients are willing, right? I mean, it's always up to them. I can coach anybody without knowing their human design, but it adds another facet to my ability to coach them when I know their design and when I can help them understand the best way to navigate things according to their chart. And so I've been asking lately, the last year, maybe the last 2 years, I've been asking for birthday, birthplace, and telling them on the form that I asked them, like, this is optional. It's only if you want me to know your human design and your astrology. And most people have said they wanted to know. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
This is interesting. This is a topic I think that we're going to want to carry on future episodes. And I can grasp just from the little bit that you've been able to share today that there's a lot to this. I mean, you said that early on today that there's a whole lot more than you could do in an hour, and I get that. I mean, that's coming through pretty clear. But nevertheless, I think we should spend time on it. Before we run out of time today, we've got about 10 minutes left, a little bit less than 10 minutes left. Talk a little bit about the 4 influences. There's the I Ching, there's the astrology. I mean, talk about how all 4 of those work together, because that part still eludes me. I'm like, wait a minute, those are 4 entirely different systems. How do they all come together in one mind up? I don't get that.
Right, and it kind of eludes me too. Like, the interesting thing is that I think my favorite, although I've studied all of these systems not deeply, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, people could study one of these systems for 30, 40, 50, 60 years and still be getting, it's kind of amazing. But I started studying, well, I mentioned the Gene Keys book. The Gene Keys are actually a version of the I Ching.
Mhm.
So there are 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, and there's 64 gene keys, and they're all pictures of hexagram. I mean, like it's known. He, when he wrote this, he was studying human design, studying the I Ching, and so he talks about it, and he's written his own version of the I Ching. And then I have a couple other versions that I like, and I really started studying that as a divination system because I like divination. But Richard Rudd talks about the I Ching having the ability to actually change our DNA.
Mm.
And it is like when I first read his book, which, like I said, chicken or egg, I can't remember if he led me to human design or if human design led me to him. It's sort of like they both happened at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
dropped like a bomb, right, into my time-space continuum. But that system just on its own is amazing. So when you take those 64 hexagrams and you realize there are 64 gates in your body graph, some of them are activated and some of them are not. And to make channels, some of them get activated when you're in the presence of someone else who completes that particular channel. It's like mind-blowing just with that one system, right?
Yeah.
And then there are another part of the chart shows conscious and design. So things you're aware of and things that are in your design that you're not. And that's where all the planets are and what gates in the chart interact with those planets. So that would be the astrology part of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's just the Hindu chakras are like this, the centers we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
There are 7 chakras and 9 centers because 2 of them they have split. And that's considered to be a type of evolution of the chakra system. Like in your chart, I think I made a note of this. The open chart, the open centers are the ones where you may pick up on other people's things more. Like one of yours, like the open head center, you have the open head center. So you may be a mind reader sometimes. Like if Louise has a defined head center, you may just know her thoughts sometimes. And I know this because I have a defined head center and my husband's is open and he reads my mind literally all the time. It's like, really? Or here's another thing that happens with those open head centers is sometimes he thinks my thought was his thought. He'll be like, no, I thought of that. I'll be like, no, you didn't. I thought of that. And also with that open head center, one of the challenges is thinking about things that don't matter. Like you'll realize later, it's like, oh, I've been spending all this time thinking about this and it doesn't even matter. The open heart center, like I said before, the challenge there is probably like feeling like we have something to prove. The open solar plexus, that often a person with an open solar plexus often likes to avoid confrontation. And then the open root, you have also the open root center, and that may be feeling like you're in a hurry to relieve pressure if there's pressure. And we always are having some kind of pressure, but I think that may have to do with you being a time bender because you like things to happen quickly and you're used to being able to execute things quickly. And multitasking is part of that. So,
that really fits for me in a law of attraction way, by the way. When I say law of attraction way, I mean in terms of understanding how LOA works, because one of my biggest issues for years and still continues to this day to be to some degree is why didn't it show up already? Come on. This should have been here by now. What's the holdup?
Right. What's the holdup? Well, I was thinking about that today, actually, and I feel like something I get clearer and clearer on as I go through this journey is acceptance. And the idea that every moment is perfect. And that's hard to comprehend sometimes when we're living in a world that's really so full of chaos. But chaos is a pattern interrupter. And we need some of these patterns to be interrupted now so that we can evolve, right? So if we think that every moment is perfect, if this moment right now is perfect, how can I have resistance? And so when we're like, why hasn't it come yet? We don't think this moment is perfect because that thing is still out there. And if this moment was perfect, that thing would be here.
True.
So that acceptance of like everything is perfect. And I recognize that I'm not always there either, but the times when I am, everything just shows up. Everything just comes to me.
That's the spooky side, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fun, but it's a little spooky when it happens. And it kind of, the way I kind of describe it for myself is it kind of knocks me off balance for a bit. Like, oh, wait a minute, what just happened here?
I hear you.
Almost like, I mean, if what you're saying about my own pattern is true, and I think it probably is, because I try not to multitask because I know how much it can actually mess things up, but I just do it anyway. And it's actually, I have to be deliberate about, okay, I'm only going to do one thing. That's a very challenging thing for me to do, just do one thing and not allow anything else in there. And I try to make it a point to do that. But because I have that tendency, it's really easy to get knocked off balance when I let go for a moment and then stuff shows up anyway, because then it's almost as if somebody out there was faster than me. You talked about how I'm quick, right? Well, wait a minute. How can someone be faster? I'm always faster than everybody else.
But it's like, when you think about this, okay, so manifesting generators, 35% of the population. So that's not a majority. Generators are 70%, but you're like a subset, right? And so if time benders, if we look at it with that name and that ability to know the shortcuts, to do lots of things at once, but I too I've probably talked about it on the podcast, right? Seeing a study somewhere that said that multitasking, even though you think you're doing more, you're not. Well, for most of it, that's true. We're not getting more done, but for you, it's not true. You are. And so this is what I talk about conditioning, right? Like we're conditioned to look at certain studies and certain facts and say, oh, okay. And it was like me thinking that I had to, burn myself out hustling or else I was never going to be successul when that's not my design. And so the more I take care of myself, the more I rest, the more downtime I have, the more I wait for invitations, the easier everything gets. So, it's like, wow, I was conditioned to think a certain way, but it's just not the way it has to be. And for you can do a lot of things at once. And you can.
But it's not necessarily good for me. That's the other piece of that. Because you're right, I can do a lot of things at the same time. I can get stuff done faster than other people, but I pay a price for that. I pay a price in terms of stress and how it affects me both mentally and physically. I pay a price for it in terms of making mistakes because, you're doing too many things at once. You can't keep track and do error checks and everything.
That's one of the things that does show up here is that, there's the possibility of skipping steps.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that creates challenges. So, well, I guess it's like anything else. There are positive sides and negative sides. There's sides that we like, sides that we don't like of all this stuff.
Yep. But the thing is that it's all working out perfectly, right? And so the better we can know ourselves, the easier things get and the easier things flow to us. So.
Well, thank you for helping me get to know myself better. I appreciate this. This is good. I like, there aren't many systems I like this one.
All right.
Because awesome. It really does resonate. It really does feel like it fits.
Well, like I said, I've been using it with clients for a couple of years and I hadn't really brought it up but I'm just having overwhelming evidence now of clients having success using this system. So I thought, well, let's talk about it.
So we're going to revisit this again, but thank you very much for introducing us to it. As usual, it was a wonderful presentation. And thank you especially to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.